This here be the tale of Captain Blubosa and the ghost fleet. The shrill squawks of seabirds funneled through the entryway of the Drowned Rat Tavern on Plunder Outpost, as Tanya, the tavern keep, begrudgingly wiped the tables of spills and chunder. The captain peeled his face from the table which he had found himself kipped in a pile of his own sick, and plagued by the echoes of a long night of revelry. Ahem. Struggling to hold his one good eye open, and reluctant to move as his mouth watered and stomach churned, Blubosa turned to face the disgruntled tavern keep. With her fists on her hips and eyebrow raised, she reached out her hand, beckoning compensation for her troubles. Blubosa reached down his pockets and pulled out the few gold coins he had left, and placed them in the awaiting palm. The tavern keep pocketed the paltry tip and huffed, then ripped the rag from her shoulder and tossed it at the captain. As the tavern keep returned to her duties, Blubosa began cleaning his face, avoiding the mustache, of course, because, although an unpleasant smell, it can't be argued that Chunder makes for a highly effective wax. It seems to me that your crew is in need of funding. Blubosa took notice of Mr. Hippie still unconscious on the cold stone tavern floor, then stopped to acknowledge the patron at the bar. I don't see how that's any business of yours, Mr. or Miss. The patron chuckled at the captain's response. No honorifics required, simply sugar will suffice. The captain opted not to dwell on the awkwardness he'd caused. Well, sugar, I wager you have something in particular to remedy our apparent lack of wealth. Sugar turned in their stool to face the captain, necked their grog and slammed their tankard on the bar. As a matter of fact, I have quite the lucrative opportunity for all parties willing to be involved. Sugar hopped from their stool and invited themselves to Blubosa's table. After a moment of pause, Sugar scooted the chair away. Presumably the smell was a little much. My crew was recruited by Madame Olivia next door, which, unfortunately, led to our being scuttled. Now, unlike myself, my comrades were somewhat lacking in tenacity, so I rowed my skiff here in hopes I might find someone with a bit more bollocks to give me a hand. Sugar took notice of the captain's hesitance. I assure you, opportunities such as this don't come about very often, friend. Blubosa always was prone to naivety when confronted with enticingly rare or fortuitous opportunities. All right. But we split the profits evenly betwixt the crew. Sugar furrowed their brow and brought attention to Mr. Hippie's compromising state. Lying lifeless on the stone floor, drooling, ungodly smells emanating from his corpse-like body. His attentions undiverted, Blubosa nodded his head. Aye. Him too. Sugar smiled and sighed, entertained by Blubosa's recalcitrant demeanor, and bowed their head in surrender. Very well. You're the captain. After heaving Mr. Hippie onto his shoulder, Blubosa showed his new crewmate to the battered wretch. Sugar gave the ship a look-over, seeing more patchwork than a pioneer woman's linen closet, then shot the captain a disconcerted look. Is she seaworthy? Blubosa paused to consider the question, shrugged, then proceeded to climb the ladder hanging from the hull. Sugar sucked in a deep breath and followed closely behind. Blubosa dropped his still yet incapacitated companion on the bed in the captain's quarters, and took notice to a skiff hanging off the stern. 2 questions, if you don't mind my asking. Sugar cleared their throat. Yes, that is my boat, if that's what you are wondering. The captain nodded his appreciation of his new crewmate's confidence and continued. More importantly, is that a cannon attached to its bow? Sugar placed their hands on their hips and grinned. Indeed it is. It can be a tad temperamental, but very effective in a pinch. A muffled applause erupted from the bed behind them, forcing a sour look on Sugar's face. The captain gave a crude smile. Aye, Mr. Hippie tends towards flatulence more than anything after going on the lash. After cashing in a favor from Maureen, the post-senior trader for the Merchants' Alliance, for swearing to secrecy after a bender they'd shared upon finding a mutual respect for pigs and their resilient nature, a tale for another time, of course, the battered wretch and her renewed stores were under way. The crew headed northeast, apprehension stirring in their hearts as dark clouds converged over Plunder Valley. A chill crept over the captain as a spectral fleet of galleons emerged from ethereal gates. With wide eyes and mouth agape, Blubosa turned to Sugar. The new crewmate let out a deep breath and nodded their understanding of the shock. Our cannons can destroy them rather easily, I assure you, but their artillery cannot be underestimated. The captain clutched the wheel and forced composure. Ready the port-side cannons! Sugar set to work, loading the cannons as the captain brought them to bear. The battered wretch unleashed volley after volley of munitions, nullifying the ghostly threat. With every spectral galleon defeated, a wave of force burst from its phantasmal form, endlessly tossing the battered wretch as if restrained by a relentless storm. Blubosa fought against every overwhelming blast, furiously spinning the wheel to give the cannons an angle in which to combat the remaining fleet. Every second was devastation, as the spectres ravaged the battered wretch with cannon fire. She's filling up fast, Captain! The captain was reluctant to leave the helm, but the crew was unable to tame the chaos. Any confidence the crew once had was dashed by fire and flame. Splinters and water filled the hull as Blubosa and Sugar desperately patched and bailed to seemingly no avail. As the captain reached the top deck, bucket in hand, a horrifying visage stole his anxieties. The ringing in his tumultuous mind was silenced by the shrill, banshee screams of a wraith-like horror fired from the enemy cannons. Blubosa braced as the battered wretch was thrown to its side. He clamored to stay aboard. Water flooded the top deck as the gong of the damned sounded from the waves. The captain rushed to his quarters, dragging Mr. Hippie's yet unconscious body from the rapidly filling room. With his crewmate in his arms, Blubosa leapt from the railing and swam from the ship's sinking carcass. Sugar resurfaced with a cannonball crate in their arms and paddled over to the rest of the crew. Blubosa sighed. Seems we were little more help than your former crew. With a look of disturbed determination, Sugar nodded at the cannon-equipped skiff floating nearby the wreckage. This fight isn't over yet, Captain. With a glint in his eye, the captain returned the expression. Aye. Agreed. Sugar climbed aboard the skiff as Blubosa passed them Mr. Hippie and the cannonball crate. Load the cannon, Captain. I'll get you in range. Blubosa let out a deep breath. If we make it out of this alive, I'll buy the first round at the tavern. The captain loaded the cannon and unleashed hell on the enemy. Sugar's muscles screamed as they rode furiously against the recoil of every cannon shot, struggling to keep angles on the spectral galleons. Shots battered the waters around the small vessel, narrowly missing the crew and sending them to their watery graves alongside their sunken ship. The skiff rocked violently with every wave that passed and ghost ship that burst, threatening to throw the crew from their stations at any moment. But the captain's aim remained true. As a last ship was slain, and peace befell those turbulent waters. Enormous, ethereal portals opened, unleashing a most dreadful sight. Black sails with a flaming heart. Blubosa made quick work of the flagship's retinue, but the flagship itself proved far more resilient. Sugar rode feverishly away from the ghostly terror, using the momentum of the captain's cannon fire, but their supplies quickly dwindled. Blubosa reached into the cannonball crate to resupply his munitions, but alas, there were none left to be found. We're out of cannonballs! Sugar grimaced, then leapt from their seat. Grab the oars, I have a few left. The captain leapt over Mr. Hippie and grabbed the oars, rowing with all the strength he could muster, as Sugar took their position behind the cannon. Sugar clenched their teeth as they unleashed everything they had left in their arsenal until, with one final desperate volley, the flagship burst in glorious fashion, nearly throwing the skiff over end. The crew clutched the sides of the vessel until it once again rested on still waters. The dark clouds dispersed as the crew slumped back into the boat and took in a breath of the chill breeze passing over them. So, Sugar said with a deserved sigh of relief, "About that drink." Mr. Hippy snapped from his stupor. "Is it time for drinking again?" Blubosa sighed. "I think we're going to need to have a talk about your drinking, Mr. Hippy." The captain and Sugar took in the much-welcome sunlight and allowed themselves a laugh at Mr. Hippy's expense.